Hello, Conlon Sinclair again, self-described fairy tale expert, or at least fairy tale writer. Calling myself an expert might be a little vain. Today's story is called Kinmont Willie. It is one of the Anglo-Scottish child ballads. It is a tough action adventure for all those out there who don't like the traditional princesses and dragons fairy tales. Lots of different fairy tales out there, kids. So you might like Kinmont Willie if you're one of those kids who says, "Oh, I don't like fairy tales." So without any further ado, this is Kinmont Willie. For many years, when Scotland and England were separate countries, the people on either side of the border hated each other without question. This attitude meant that it wasn't considered a crime for the English to steal from the Scots or the Scots to steal from the English. The robbers who went across the border were called reivers. The most famous of them were Kinmont Willie and Lord Scroope. Kinmont Willie was a merry man who would ride across the border and steal back anything the English took from his Scottish friends, while Lord Scroope was supposed to be the sheriff, but was in reality a thief himself. One day, the queens of England and Scotland, fed up with all this stealing, told everyone that they needed to stop right now. They thought it was all the stealing that caused the English to hate the Scots and the Scots to hate the English. This annoyed wicked Lord Scroope quite a bit. He still dreamt about sending Kinmont Willie to jail. So, ignoring the orders of the Queen, Lord Scroope gathered his men and rode across the border. This time he would steal not cows or sheep or gold, but Kinmont Willie. Lord Scroope took Kinmont Willie back to his castle and tossed him in the dungeon. Despite what the English Queen has said, I say you are a thief who belongs in jail. Therefore you can stay in my dungeon forever. Well, I believe that my cousin, Bold Bucklock, will come over the border and free me. But don't worry, I've never stayed in a hotel and not paid my bill, Lord Scroope, Kinmont Willie replied. And indeed, Bold Bucklock heard that Kinmont Willie had been kidnapped, and in anger he shouted, "And how will Lord Scroope explain this to his queen? Our queen said not to fight any more, and yet he goes and does this. I will rescue Kinmont Willie." And so Bold Bucklock has gathered together 22 reivers to ride into England and save Kinmont Willie. However, because the Queen said no more fighting, his men will not carry swords or shields, but only their hunting horns. And so the 22 have ridden across the river Stark into England and crept along close to the ground until they have come to the castle of Lord Scroope. That night, when it was quite dark outside, and they have quietly taken out their ladders and readied themselves, they climbed over Lord Scroope's wall into his castle. Now let us blow our horns to scare these Englishmen into a panic, so they simply run around while we grab Kinmont Willie and ride back home, said Bold Bucklock. And so all 22 Scots blew their horns at once. The sound woke up all Lord Scroope's men, who thought maybe the Queen of Scots herself had heard that they'd kidnapped Kinmont Willie, and sent the entire Scottish army to rescue him. The English ran away as quickly as they could to avoid fighting the Scots. Meanwhile, Bold Bucklock made his way into the dungeon and found Kinmont Willie. "Willie, my cousin, you've gotten in trouble again, but fear not, I have come to save you." "Oh, thank you so much. I was not sleeping so well in this English bed. It is too soft for a Scot," replied Kinmont Willie. And then they made their escape out of the castle and towards the river Stark. But Lord Scroope did not run away with the others. Instead, he ran after Kinmont Willie and Bold Bucklock all the way down to the river. "Oh, Kinmont Willie, what will you do now? Bold Bucklock and his reavers have horses that can swim across the river Stark, but you, on the other hand, are alone and in chains. How do you plan to get across?" teased Lord Scroop. "Oh, I'll just swim there myself," cried Kinmont Willie, and he jumped into the river, and a matter of minutes later he was on the other side. "I told you, Lord Scroop, I've never stayed in a hotel and not paid my bill. So if you ever come visit me at my farm in Scotland, I'll pay you back for my stay in your dungeons. Until then, goodbye, Lord Scroop," shouted Kinmont Willie, as Bold Buckloop and his readers followed him to the other side. All the Scots were laughing and cheering, and Lord Scroop broke down and cried, "Oh, to swim across the river Stark without a horse, and then to laugh at me from the other side. There is no other explanation but Kinmont Willie is magical. Perhaps his mother is a witch, or perhaps he himself is some elf from the Scottish woods." And that is Kinmont Willie. So, as always, there is a link in my About page on YouTube to my book of fairy tales. This fairy tale is not included, but some other great action-adventure ones are, including the Lochmaben Harper, or, yeah, some great ones. So, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again soon.